Hello and welcome to Anonymators Discuss, a spin-off show from the usual reviews or interviews where we decide to just talk about a topic that interests us and we feel will maybe help people or whatever, it's just a general discussion, a forum if you will. So today it's going to just be myself and Emily, and we're going to be discussing how to get into an art school, looking into getting into an art school and maybe progressing into the field of commercial art and animation.
Yeah. If you are a fine artist, just want to do art for the sake of art, this discussion is not for you. This is more for commercial artists, people who want to be freelancers and illustrators and specifically animators.
Yeah. The big difference between, commercial art and fine art is, the way I would say it is, fine art is definitely a little bit more intellectual, with inverted commas. It's more of a study of art. And then figuring out like the psychology behind art, or whatever makes them feel special, and commercial art is pretty much the mainstream art view,
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking about sort of dipping your toes in there, and from what we've learned, from what other people have learned, we've gathered some information, and just to sort of share that and help you decide how to get to that stage if that is your goal.
Yes. This is specifically for people who are looking into going to art school. I actually have a couple of friends who they want to look into doing art school, but don't really know, what it is that they need to look for. So I put this together specifically for people who, you're like in high school or middle school, or you've just graduated and you want to look into doing animation professionally. Then here's some information that I myself and I've discussed with other people, gathered over the years, and we hope that this benefits you.
Yeah. Okay. And one last thing, there's an interview I did a while ago with Hollis Blaney, who he talks about getting into the animation industry and talks about new artists and new animators getting in, and that's very, very interesting too. I found, at least, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback. So if you are done with this and you want to hear a bit more from a professional, someone who's done directing and lead animation, then you should go and listen to the Hollis Blaney podcast.
He's definitely had a lot more experience than we have.
Yes, and he's been in the commercial animation scene for quite some time.
Yeah, so we thought we'd discuss with just why go to art school, why not to go to art school.
Sure.
Some of the things that I've heard why to go to art school is just to better your skills.
I agree with that. Like, let's sort of start off, like, why exactly would you go to art school? Now, there's the argument starts off, you need your degree.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, and take this with a grain of salt. But art school isn't necessary. It's not necessarily necessary. See, I tongue-tied myself.
Oh, okay.
And especially when it comes to commercial art, when it comes to art in general. Arguably, with fine art, maybe yes, you would need to definitely study the histories and the techniques and the styles and stuff. The difference is with commercial art, you could get away with doing everything at home.
Yes.
You could be practicing and becoming your own artist, and that's all fine and well. The great thing about going to an art school is not to get that diploma. And at the end of the day, the end of the year, the end of the 4 years, that diploma doesn't really mean anything. The important thing is your portfolio.
Oh yeah.
Your portfolio, your demo reel, the actual product that you can show to a potential client or a potential boss, that they see, oh, you can do the quality or a high quality that we're looking for. That's the important thing. And so that's what you want to look at when going into an art school, is how good are they at improving your skills. You could already be a great artist, but you're maybe not applying it necessarily right. And so these schools will teach you how to apply it in a commercial field, into a business field.
That being said, just because we say that you don't need a degree does not mean that if you're already in art school, it does not mean that you should just drop out. That's not at all what we're saying.
Not at all. It's the whole concept of the billionaire who dropped out of high school. That is so uncommon. That is like one person out of a billion people.
That is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, so not everyone who drops out of art school or doesn't finish their art year becomes the next great thing or gets the millions of dollars. You don't believe the hype.
Yes.
You know, go to school, get the teachers to help you. That's what they're there for. They're not there to just take your money. I mean, sure, it is partly a business at points, but learn from them.
Yes.
They've done it, so learn from them. Take what they've learned and then build upon that. Don't try and start from scratch. Don't try and relearn or re-establish rules that have already been established. It's not going to help you.
Yeah.
You know, the best thing you could do is learn from these people who have these things and then build up upon that.
Yeah. As an anecdotal evidence, like I back in 2009, I went to San Diego Comic-Con and I met this professional artist, and she told me that, like, this was before I went to Van Arts, and I was asking her, like, well, I'm thinking about going into art school, but I don't know, like, what it is I'm looking for. She said, don't go to art school for the degree, go for the networking, because I never even finished my degree. The reason I dropped out is because I got a job offer. Like, that, I think that is the important thing. You go to art school for the networking,
And not only with your peers, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you go to art school, you make friends with the people close by, and that's very important, I would say, because you make friends with that one person who knows how to schmooze.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, don't make friends with them just because of that. That's horrible. But, you know, try. You know, make friends with not just like-minded folks, but the person who knows how to schmooze, who knows how to talk to other people, who knows how to get ahead, who knows how to ask for work, you know, is not afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, genuinely make friends with that person, because it's beneficial for you on both a social level and a job level, a professional level. And, you know, then also make friends. Like, one thing I do regret at Van Arts is not really making friends with the lecturers. I mean, I had opportunities, I just never took them. And I've seen some friends who have made friends with other friends who've made friends with these lecturers, and they get like, you know, nice little heads up of things. So, you know, but be genuine in your friendship, because people can tell if you're trying to make friends just to take advantage of them.
Oh, yeah.
People will pick that up. You know, like, some people won't. Some people are desperate for friendship, sure, but there are people out there that they'll drop you, you know, if they're not gonna be your friend if you're doing it, you know, just for the sake of benefiting yourself.
Yeah.
But that being said, make friends, talk to people.
Don't be a hermit like you were in, because, like, you know, coming from, I know not so much myself, but I knew a lot of folks who, they went to public high school, and they were just a huge hermit when they were in high school. Don't do that, because you're going to be, if you find a good fit art school for you, you want to make friends, because these are not, like, I actually got a question from one of my younger followers on DeviantArt. He said, like, I'm a bit worried about bullies, because I get bullied a lot being in school because I'm the artist. I guarantee you, if you find yourself a good art school, you are not going to get bullied because you are the artist. You might find mean folks, yes, but you're not going to be bullied for the artist. In fact, you might make more friends, because these are also people who have similar interests and similar likes.
Yeah.
And
this is a good opportunity for you to sort of come out of that shell and start defining yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
it's okay. So yeah, in high school, nobody would let you be the geeky art kid, sure. But now that you're out surrounded by other geeky art kids, you know, figure out. And the one thing I get annoyed at is sort of the you know, like how I've just seen it with, like, everyone who thinks they're so unique that they recede into themselves, and they're like, oh, but I can do things myself. And it's like, okay, but fine, do that, but then it never works for them, and then later, a few years later, they complain about it. And it's like, okay, but we told you not to do that type of thing. And I'm not gonna just sit here and be like, I've also had I still have trouble making friends and talking to people. I still feel uncomfortable just opening up to people I've never met before. But once I get to know you, you actually have a hard time shutting me up. So it's...
I can attest to that. You were incredibly quiet when we first met you. Like, you didn't want to talk to people, but once you found a good group of friends, then we all started doing... Was it the Friday night movies? And I remember one of our... Well, he's not really a lecturer, but he's definitely a huge guy at Van Arts, Ken. was just like, man, love it that you guys get together and do movies on Friday nights. Like, that's just great. I love the fact that you guys are getting together and doing stuff. And that's what you gotta do. And all we did was watch movies on Friday.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a really pretty decent idea. Like, it doesn't have to be movies. It doesn't have to be video games. It can be board games. It can be going out and drinking for the night. You know, like, find that posse of friends. Find that little animation posse and then go out and just hang out, you know, like find, you know, and there will be that one person who loves movies as much as you do, or that one person who loves watching cartoons as much as you do. Or, I mean, that's what we did. We didn't just watch movies. We watched, and we made like a little thing of it. You know, we had the animated feature before the movie, then we watched the movie, maybe we'd watch 2 movies, and then we'd go home and talk about the movie on the way out, you know. And I mean, that's pretty much how Anonymous Animated Reviews sort of spawned, was just, I wanted to talk to my friends about the movies we just watched. And it's and everyone's always got different opinions about stuff. It might not even be the right opinions, but at least it's an opinion. It's interesting. So find interests with other friends at art school, the lecturers, whoever you can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Networking is important. Friendship is also very important.
Yeah.
And you may as well, you know, 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yes. And then there have been people who have come out, actually, if I can move this along, say that there are reasons you shouldn't go to art school, actually. And I wanted to address this because I don't necessarily agree with them, but I did want to bring them up. A big thing always comes up is that art school is expensive. And it is. In fact, that was a huge reason why I didn't want to go. You know, I wasn't sure if the cost would like the short-term cost
the
benefits
outweigh the cost.
Yeah. And yeah,
well,
it is expensive.
To cover that a little bit more, yes, school in general is expensive, especially privatized school. A lot of art schools tend to be private, you know, so they will be a little bit pricier depending. Again, don't look at it as getting, it's not a degree thing. Think of it, the way I like to think of it is, you are taking a year off, and you're paying for it, sure, but you're taking this year off to develop your skills, to you know, and that's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
You know, if you leave there with the 1 to 4 years, depending on what type of system you use, if you leave there and thinking, oh, you've got your degree and that's all that matters, that little piece of paper that says you have like fine arts or commercial arts understanding, you're not going to get, I mean, you're going to get work, sure, but you want that portfolio to shine. You want to make it shine like a diamond. And if you feel that you can do that with online tutorials or a cheaper online course, and that you feel that you don't need the networking as strongly, because that's one of the big benefits, definitely the networking.
Oh yeah.
And then taking that 1 year off, just focusing full time on your portfolio, versus if you're, say, working a job and then going home to do your portfolio work. I've known a lot of artists who don't want to work at home after getting. I'm one of those artists. When I get home after like 9 hours of animation, I don't want to sit down and draw anymore. I mean, I want to, but it's like I'm just so tired. My brain is wired. I sit down and I watch a movie or I listen to a show or something. You know, it's.
I mean, we're going like, well, you yourself, you have a longer commute than I do, so I walk to work. So
yeah, so it's if you personally feel that an art school does not benefit you, and you need to sit down and ask yourself these things. You know, it's like, what will help me? Do I need these connections? Do I? And it's so tough. I mean, like we were talking about this yesterday. We were saying, when you're 18 and you're thrown into this world and you're expected to know what job you want, if not even earlier. I think they expect you at 16 to start like, which college do you want to go to? Which university do you want to go to? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know what jobs are. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And so I like a story covering, when I was working, I just gotten into my graphic design fields. I was working at this one studio. We were making animation, like little animations for a electronic book type of thing, a medical book. And so basically what I had to do was I would use Flash, and then we would draw like the pictures, and then like say like a needle injecting into a skin, and then you'd have to animate like the blood like being drawn or whatever, you know. Or, like it was a textbook. The idea was the medical student would be looking at this, answering questions and all that type of stuff. So I had some friends that I had met over some forums for other stuff, and they were interested in becoming artists.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, oh, he wants to get into graphic design. Can he come and follow me? And so I'm like, shadow me. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know if you know what shadowing is. It's basically...
I know what shadowing is.
In case the listeners don't, I guess shadowing is just when somebody younger stands and watches over somebody at a job, And then, anyway, so he's watching, and we gave him a couple of jobs to do. After 3 days, he was going to be there for 5 days. After 3 days, he said, no, he hates this. This is not for him. Now, imagine he had spent 2 to 4 years studying the graphic design, then getting thrown into the field.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the animations. I mean, he wasn't doing the animations. He was doing the graphic design. We sat him down. We got him to design some logos, and at the other section of the firm. Mm-hmm. It was just the section that I was working on was the animation, and so he didn't like it. Now he's studying. He focused more on fine art, and he's now a background artist and a character designer and all that stuff. And that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But for a second in his life, it was like, oh, I want to be a graphic designer, because that's obviously what graphic designers do. And that wasn't what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's important. Also, go and shadow.
Oh, that's a huge reason why I decided Van Arts was because I actually looked into other schools, and I actually did go to visit another campus, but I didn't get to, I just sat in an office and talked to a recruiter for like 2 hours, but a huge reason why I chose Van Arts over that other school was because I got to shadow at Van Arts. Like, I went all the way up to Vancouver from Albuquerque, which is like, I think I actually I looked on Google Maps. It was like almost it was like 1,500 miles or something like that.
Okay.
It was a long way.
Yeah.
But and they were like, oh, well, since you're here, let's set up I set up the appointment before I left, obviously, but they're like, oh, let's set up a date for you so that you can just follow a student around and just go in the classrooms and talk to the students and talk to the lecturers. That was a huge selling point for me because they're very straightforward. It's like, this is what we do. This is what we try to help you with.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the expense, it does the reason why I sort of deviated into sort of figuring out what you wanted to do is, it is expensive. So a little bit of research into the different schools, maybe visiting the schools if it's possible. Yes. If it's not possible, like me, I was in South Africa at the time looking into coming to a Canadian school. I couldn't come on an open day. It was just not going to happen. I didn't have the money for that. So what I did was I asked a lot of people online, people who went to that school, people who had heard good things about that school, and I asked them questions. And it wasn't just people who were pro that school. Also ask people who are against that school. Get all the opinions, and then decide for yourself. Yeah, there's a ton of reviews online.
I actually went to, I found a website of just Canadian art schools, and so I looked at all the opinions. And on that note, the anecdotal evidence that you brought up actually reminded me of another reason why not to go to art school. And I think this is a big one, because this is something that people don't bring up, is that doing art professionally, commercially, is not for everyone. Mm-hmm. People, I've actually met people who they say, oh, I went to animation school because I thought it would be easy. It is not. It is not easy. People, I had the same trouble when I went to a university. People just went to art class because they thought, oh, this is going to be an easy A. It isn't. If you don't love doing art, it's going to be a huge chore. And so you have to actually sit yourself down and ask yourself, am I willing to do this 8 hours a day? And if the answer is no, I would suggest going into a different field.
Look, it's a crazy creative environment. It's very, sometimes you find bosses who are like, no, just do what we tell you. And then, you know what? Do what they tell you, because that's what they're paying you for. If you don't do what your bosses tell you, you're not going to get paid. But you do get some bosses out there who are like, you tell me what you want to do.
Yes.
It's I've had 2 bosses who were very supportive in my graphic design career, where they were like, we don't know anything about graphic design. You give it to us. Where I've had other bosses who are like, they obviously don't know anything about design, but they want these things, and it's like, no, but that's not how that works. You need, you need this design, or you need this to go with that. You know, like you can't use these colors, but they won't listen to you, and they want their dog on the website and all that nonsense. And that's what happens. So you have to also understand that it's a job.
Yes.
It is art, and it's very, you know, and you can be creative, but you do have boundaries.
Yes.
You know, everybody always promotes coloring outside the box. Commercial art is about coloring inside the box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are like some exceptions. There are some bosses who will allow you out the box, and there are some.
I myself have had a client who was just like, look, I don't know anything about this, so I have an idea in my head, but if you have a better suggestion, please tell me.
Exactly. It's just do the work that's expected of you, and if you feel, well, I mean, I guess we'll get more into talking about you know, like the professionalism in a minute, because I do have a story there that I want to talk about. But I do want to cover one more thing with the expense. Don't be afraid also to fail.
Yes.
A lot of people think failing is the end, or failing is the worst possible thing. Okay? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to actually save up that money, go to art school, realize it's not for you. Do not be afraid to give up. Don't be afraid to cancel that investment. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it sucks to have wasted that money. But the things you've learned, you will be surprised. The dumbest things you've learned in your life will come back to you 5, 10, 15 years later, and you'll apply it to something. Mm-hmm. You know, you'll be like, oh, when I was a kid, I used to goof around with sound equipment and electronics and stuff, and that comes back every now and then. I'm like, oh right, I can fix this, and I can fix this mic, and I can do this. I don't know really anything about sound engineering or mechanical engineering. I don't know, but it's like that little thing I taught myself and read in a book, and now I can apply, and it comes back every now and then. Same thing with art. You'll learn Photoshop, and maybe you hate it. Maybe you never want to be a commercial artist after that, and that's fine. So you give up after that 1 year and you go on. But then 5 years down the line, somebody's like, oh, you do I need something done in Photoshop real quick. And it just helps you. Yeah, fine. It was really expensive. It was a $50,000 Photoshop lesson, but it does help you. It does everything you've ever learned will help you. Mm-hmm. You know, no matter how stupid it is, whether it's just a conversation with a friend, or you're just trying to impress somebody, or you just need to get a job done and make it smoother, rather than relying on, say, MS Paint, you now have a little bit of Photoshop knowledge.
Yeah.
That helps you. So don't be afraid to learn something, and if you feel that it's not for you, don't be afraid to fail. Give it up, move elsewhere. Like, get the next job for you, you know? Like, and don't think that you need to be the 21-year-old big success.
Yeah.
That's also uncommon. Very uncommon. There are millions of people out there who only started making their fortunes and their names when they were 55, 60 years old. You know, not everybody is, Mark Zuckerberg, or, you know, that like leave high school and make, that's just the stories you're being fed all the time.
Yeah.
Don't worry about being the success now. Work at being the success, but you don't have to be the success at this very single second. If you are, great, then ride with it. But don't worry about being it.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I've gotten into many. Unfortunately, we're stuck in this this economic period in which you can't be the success at 21. You can't just.
It's very uncommon.
Yeah,
it's not an easy thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you know, I've heard many kids who their parents are telling them, like, why aren't you in the big Disney studio at the age of 21?
Yeah. Like,
that's not really possible anymore. It's not possible to get a really good job at 21 anymore. You can. I shouldn't say that it isn't possible, but it's not as common as it once was. So don't worry. Like, I mean, I myself, actually, I studied film in high school. Just on the mention of, you never know when you might need these skills. I studied film in high school and in college. I helped a lot of friends with short little film projects, and for film festivals and stuff. And I am very surprised at how much the film that I learned, the films that I learned, like all the skills about rules of thirds and how to center a character on screen and continuity, all that stuff, I apply to my job every day. Like, and also to finish up, why not to go to art school? A lot of people who dropped out of Art Institute, I find also, I think it's because they actually make them use online tutorials, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but then they say, oh, you don't need to go to art school because you can just find tutorials online.
No, tutorials of, like, look, I love tutorials. I do.
Oh, absolutely. I
Go
use
online.
them all the time.
There are tons of online repositories that you can go to, and there's some amazing tutorials how to do some amazing things with Photoshop, whether it's photo manipulation or painting, digital painting, like audio stuff, how to, there's a lot out there. There's some really good websites. I'm not going to name any because we're not being paid. No, I'm kidding. Like lynda.com has some amazing stuff there.
Oh, yeah. I recently, a coworker friend of mine recently gave me Control Paint. Basic will start you off at the very basics on how to draw from life and move you up to digital painting. It's great.
But there has to be something that is said about having a lecturer or a professional next to you who can. That's what I loved about at Van Arts, was how the lecturers would sit and watch the animation with you while you were going on it, and then being like, no, fix this, and you learnt the mistakes you're making, you're having fixed now rather fixing later in the industry or something. It's like, so a lot of our final films came out and the storyboards were really nice because we had a really good storyboard teacher. We had a really good, like a bunch of great animator teachers, and step by step they made sure that we didn't, and it was like 3 months, like a lot of schools are here, sometimes they spend just a few weeks like focusing on, because we had a 1 year intensive. So I'm talking about 1 year intensives. Like other schools have like 1 year to do their thing. But I mean, we had a 30-second film. We had 3 months to do it in, and it was like a lot of it came. A lot of it's refined.
Yes.
Very few exceptions of some kids who just didn't get through it, but that's what it was. And so there's something to be said about having that like little nitpicky voice next to you.
Oh yes, absolutely. Because you can follow the tutorial tit for tat, but if you're making the same fundamental mistakes over and over again, and no one's pointing them out to you, then you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. Yeah,
they help you. It's like driving a car. You can learn some bad habits driving a car until you get a proper person to come and help you, teach you the basics, and then you just relearn the mistakes over. Because even in a professional industry, there are a lot of shortcuts you take. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know those basic fundamental steps at actually making those shortcuts, I've seen the difference. Like people who don't know your 12-step animation process, who you can see they don't know it because the character doesn't, there's no lead and follow, for example, but the character's moving.
Yeah.
So they understand the mechanical work behind it, but they don't understand I guess you could say, the theory behind the animation.
Yeah. And the big thing too I want to bring up about our tutorials, and yes, you can find these tutorials online, but ask yourself very seriously, will I actually use them? Because I've heard a lot of I myself am actually very guilty of this, where I just hoard these tutorials, but I use maybe 10% of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I won't lie there too. I am also quite the hoarder of tutorials. I've got like a bookmark folder on my browser, just like it says tutorials, and I saw them once. I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that, and then I've saved it there. That happens. So that's also a thing I think school has an advantage over, is there's this little sort of implied discipline that is needed. It's like, you need to do this job. Of course, that still relies on you, because there are lots of kids out there who are like, I don't want to do it because the school tells me. And that's fine. You're just wasting your own money. But if you're going to the school, do what the school tells you. You're there to learn. You're paying the money to learn from that school.
Yes.
You fighting the system, quote, fighting the man because I'm my own personal artist. Fine, that's all great and well, but you're literally wasting your own money.
Yeah.
You've paid these people to teach you what they know. Don't fight what they know. Learn what they know and then adapt it your own way.
Yeah. I had someone who previously went to art school. She said, leave ego at the door. Even if you think your teachers are 100% wrong, just do what they tell you, because they probably know something you don't.
Yeah. And it's not to say we're not telling you not to be creative. That's also not the matter here.
In fact, the time to be creative is art school.
Yeah.
Just get your assignments done.
Yeah, yeah. Do what's asked of you. From a professional standpoint, do what's asked of you. Think of it like a job. If you don't do what's asked of you, you're not going to get paid. In the same way at school, do what's asked of you, and if you don't, you're not going to get your marks, or you're not going to get decent marks. And yeah, I know we said the diploma at the end of the day doesn't mean anything, but you still want to learn.
Yes.
You know, the idea is you still want to get that knowledge and then break those rules later. It's like you can't break the rules of anatomy if you haven't learnt anatomy. You can't break the rules of animation if you don't know what those rules are.
I've seen plenty of fine art pieces that try to break the rules, and then suddenly you've got a painting of a woman with 2 knees. I'm not even joking. I once house sat for this woman, and she had this painting in the bathroom of it was like a woman, and she had a towel over her, and it was her backside, and I kept staring at it, and I'm like, why does that woman have 2 knees? How did you not see that in the sketch?
Sometimes I guess you don't notice.
Anyway, moving on. So I compiled a list of questions of things that you should ask yourself. The number one thing that you should ask yourself before I move on, the number one thing you should ask yourself before you say, no, I don't want to go to art school, or I'm going to try to do it on my own merits, ask yourself, will you treat it like a job? Because I've known people is like, no, I'm going to try to do it on my own merits, and I'm going to try to get my own portfolio together, and then they never do. Yeah. You know, I'm going to do that big comic, and you know, this is multiple people that I've met over.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, on the other end of the fence, I mean, the webcomic artist for questionable content, he started and I mean, to be fair, his art in the beginning was not the greatest. And fair enough, it still has a lot of room for improvement. But if you compare what he's releasing now to what was being released 8 years ago, you know, it's like there's these vast improvements, and he's turned this into a business. He makes money off the shirts and the merchandising of this website, you know. And so if that's your goal, if you want to make a successful webtoon, you have to do what this guy did. And in the beginning, all he did was, while he was working his jobs, he made sure to release every Tuesday and Thursday a webcomic. Every Tuesday and Thursday. He would not miss a date. Yes. And if he was going to miss like his comic, he made sure to put a sketch in. But every Tuesday and Thursday there was a post. That's how you keep it professional. He still did his own thing, but he kept it professional. He made sure that his audience was satisfied constantly. And then when he was able to start making his money off the comic, he quit his job, and now it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday comic. Oh
yeah, there are lots of webcomic artists online. As long as you keep to a strict schedule, people will read it. Because
and things like Patreon are there to support you. We're not telling you not to do this stuff, but we are telling you to keep it professional.
Yeah, it is a job. You have to keep that in mind. It is a job. You're gonna have to put your hours in. If you don't, you're gonna fail. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. I compiled a list of questions of things that you want to ask yourself while looking into an art school. These are questions that you might ask a recruiter or someone who went there. And the number one thing I think should be taken into consideration: what do I want to get out of this? Do I want to make a job at commercial art? Do I want to make my webcomic? And I think this will help you... Shut up. Dang it, I thought I'd turn that off. That will help you to factor in how much cost you want to put into it, what you want to get out of it. Because, I mean, if you're just doing it for a webcomic, maybe you can get away with just taking night classes. Yeah. If you want to get a job, I would definitely look into if you want to get a job and you're just got out of high school, or you don't have any education beyond a high school diploma, definitely look into the 4-year, the 3, 4, 5-year, whatever you need.
Well, that basically pretty much just covers, like, make sure you know what you want to get into. And again, don't look at it from the you must know now type of thing.
Yes.
Because it's impossible to know now. You haven't got, like, especially if you've come out of high school, it's impossible to know exactly what you want to do. Kids, like, sorry to... Yeah. But when I graduated, I knew I wanted to do art. Like, I knew when I was 16 I was going to go follow an artistic profession. I didn't know exactly what I needed to do. Like, I always wanted to be an animator, but animation was is very limited in South Africa. Like, we don't have any access to that. So I knew from an early age. And there are a lot of people out there who know from such an early age that I'm going to be this thing. And that's great. Follow that passion. to the very end. Don't give up on it. But if you are uncertain for a split second, step back and ask yourself the questions, And if you can't answer a question that you've asked yourself, like, what do I want to do? Oh, I want to be a graphic designer. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Go and ask graphic designers online. Ask a graphic designer friend. Maybe you can go to shadow them at a job. Go do the job for one day, and then ask yourself, like, is this something I want to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Maybe you can even and like this is I don't imagine this is a very common practice for many reasons, but maybe go to a firm and just be like, look, I just want to work here for a week. Just let me work here. You don't have to pay me. Just give me a job to do, and I want to see if I can do it, type of thing. Maybe you can do something like that. I don't know if
that's possible. But...
Yeah, because I know there's like a lot of labor laws that kick in that way. But try and figure something out. Like, try and get the job done. Do maybe even online graphic design, work, like freelance work, and just get, but get a little bit of practice and see if it's something you like.
Or even, like, if you can't do anything in a professional sense, just try, like, after school, or if you're not in school, just 8 hours a day, or after school, just put in a couple hours a day. Just draw. Just draw every day for 5 days a week.
Well, that should go without saying, right? Like,
sure.
If you're going to go into any form, commercial or fine art forms, like, you should be practicing every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Squeeze out an hour or two a day if you can.
Make like a short-running webcomic. Just do something that just...
Do gestures. Gesture drawing has... I wish somebody told me to do gesture drawings when I was young. I don't know why my art teacher never told me to do gesture drawings, but...
I'm surprised too. Yeah, me too. I didn't really... I did a lot of still life, but they weren't really gestures.
Yeah, like, I would have benefited way more. And I have. Like, lately I've been just practicing gesture drawings. Like, I try and pump out like a sheet of just drawings that I can put on my blog just once a month, just to, practice different posings and dynamic posing and everything. And that helps so much. And anatomy, but I think we'll get back to that later, but anatomy is so important. And just practicing motion.
Yeah. Anyway, so question number 2, that was a long one.
Sorry.
Question number 2, is art really something I want to do for the rest of my life? And I put a little subtext here. Not that changing your mind at 30 is a bad thing. Okay, I
was about to say.
Like... It
doesn't have to be for the rest of your life. It could literally be just for the next 10 years of your life.
Oh, absolutely. Look, people change. That's just the nature of humans. Like, I've known people that, like... They do something for 10 years and then they decide, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Go back to school, learn a new skill, and then do that for the next 10 years.
Well, exactly what I was saying earlier. Don't be afraid to give up. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to be that guy who he spent 10 years doing graphic design and then didn't want to do it anymore. I'm that guy. I did graphic design for like 8 years and I was annoyed. I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. I sold everything, came to Canada. Sure, it happens. Do it. As Shia LaBeouf says, do it. If you're not happy, if it's not making the money you want, if it's not getting you the pathway that you want to be, do not be afraid to stop.
Yes.
Don't look at what you've spent to get where you are, because if you stop now and start again, you at least in 10 years later or 5 years later, you'll at least be where you want to be.
Interesting tidbit about changing your mind 10 years from now. What was it? Humans actually, you basically don't have the same cells you did 11 years ago.
Every 11 years you've completely regenerated your cells.
So think about it this way. 10 years ago, you were a completely different person than you are now.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to be a different person, because your cells sure aren't.
Yeah, and again, also, if you want to be the same person, that's also fine.
Yeah.
What we're just saying is don't be afraid to be what you want to be, is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Anyway, question number 3, is the cost worth the experience? Just basically, like, I know that sometimes I've gotten discussions, is like, the cost shouldn't matter, you should just do the thing that you want to do, but cost kind of does matter. So if the price tag of the school seems a little bit too steep, maybe look into something a little bit, like, cheaper, because I had another person tell me that you don't have to go to the most expensive, exquisite art school to get a job.
No, you don't have to. It's Look, from a personal experience, I will say yes, the cost was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I had a lot of support from family, so like financial support. So it didn't put me into like major debt.
Yeah.
You know, I just have to pay a couple of things back here and there, but I'm not going to suffer for the next 5 to 10 years, you know, because of paying crippling debt. But if you find that like you think maybe it's tough because you can only really evaluate that cost benefit after the fact. You know, it's like, do I want to go to the 4-year school? Do I want to go to the 1-year cram school? Do I want to do a 3-month course online? You know, obviously, but also remember this: you also do get what you pay for.
Yes.
If you do cheap out and go for the cheaper courses, the whatever school or an online course that's even just cheaper than the more popular ones, you're gonna get what you pay for. That's just how it works. On occasion, maybe you might get like one juicy tidbit, but generally speaking, you know, take that rule of thumb, you get what you pay for. You put a little bit more money in, you're going to get better quality in return.
Yeah, that brings us to question number 4. And this also factors into cost. Is the equipment/software up to date? Because, well, this is why we say visit the school, because if they're using Windows 98 computers and Photoshop 7, you might want to reconsider.
Yeah. It's, again, that's where the research would come in. When you're like, oh, I'm interested in this school or this business, make sure you speak to people that have been around, like that have at least had the experience if you can't get there yourself.
Yeah. Question number 5. What are the requirements for getting in? I've actually heard that if there's no portfolio check for the art school, that's kind of a red flag.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust that. Because that sounds like a school that would take anybody.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if there's a school that takes anybody, anybody will be there. And we mean anybody.
Yeah. That being said, it doesn't hurt to do the research. Because, again, just speak to the students from that school. And then maybe you'll get a student who'll be like, yeah, like, I didn't learn anything while I was there. And then you might get a student who's like, oh, wow, it was the best year of my life. You know, I learned so much.
Yeah.
It does come down. These are just basic steps. Just like little warnings, you know, just maybe keep them in the back of the head when you're doing the research.
Yeah. And then question number 6, will I mesh well with these students? Reason I brought this up is because there's a really great school called Emily Carr. And like a friend of mine was like, when I was talking into going to Vancouver for art school, she said, oh, try looking into Emily Carr. Did a little research and I was like, he's not really my folks, not really my type. These are great artists, but it's just not what I'm looking into. And that's really all it is. Just, you know, because artists are of a different breed. You know, graphic artists are a different monster than commercial artists. And commercial artists are a different beast than fine artists. And, you know, sometimes they don't really get along, so that's why you want to look into...
There is a mentality or an attitude on both sides. Very like, what's it, Jets and Sharks?
The West Side Story.
Yeah, like a very, you know, I saw it at my first graphic design school, where there was this attitude of these fine artists from the varsity, and they were like looking down on us, you know, and we were like, well, we're just doing graphic design, like we don't think we're better than you type of thing. And then, you know, like, oh, you're selling your art and nose up in the air, and we're like, but that's what we want to do. And then when we all graduate and then we're going out looking for work, we're all getting jobs because we're commercial artists. They're not getting anything because fine artists have a very hard time finding work, you know, that's outside of sort of the intellectual field or, you know, gallery thing. And then those guys who were making fun of us for being commercial artists, or at least not making fun, but looking down on us, were eventually doing crash courses in Photoshop and whatnot just so they could get into those fields, you know? And it was like, and I saw that at Van Arts too. They were like, the attitude of some people who were like, I don't want to learn Harmony. And it's like, I don't want to learn Flash. I want to do 2D hand-drawn animation.
Yes,
that's great. That's noble. I'd love 2D animation, hand-drawn animation to come back. But it's expensive and not a lot of people are doing it. So you need, if you want to get into the industry, you need to learn the tools of that industry.
Which is exactly why you need to ask yourself straight, you know, pretty much up front, it's all well and great when you don't have to pay your bills. But when you have to pay your bills, you have to think, okay, what do I really want?
Fine arts are definitely for the bourgeois. You know, they're the people who don't have to worry because daddy will pay the bill at the end of the week.
Well,
or the bourgeoisie. If you
yes. Anyway, so speaking of money,
Mm-hmm.
question number 7: is this a for-profit college? The reason I bring this up is because for-profit schools, I've yet to hear really good things about them. They tend to just want to suck out all the money that they want out of you and then not really teach you what it is that you need to.
Yeah.
So
again, research.
Again, yes.
Talk to the students of that school. Find out what their job placement is like. You know, like, or the jobs. Well, not necessarily job placement, but like the chances of getting a job after leave. Like, how many of those students are working in those fields?
Oh yes, that's a huge thing. So that's why you want to talk to previous students. Number 8, this was something that came up to me and I hadn't thought about until I started looking into schools. How often are the professors there? Because I've heard stories from other schools that, like, yeah, the professor is this big shot Disney guy, but he's also working full time and doesn't have time to teach the students. So it's like, yeah, it's great that he's there and he's got a really good opinion and knows how to teach, but he's never there, so that's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I chose Van Arts, is because those guys are pretty much there full time.
Though, to be fair, we kind of had that problem for a little while, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We had a couple of, not like full-time professors, but the part-time professors. But, yeah, just something also to keep in mind. Again, ask the students, because it's all well and great to be able to play by yourself without any chaperones, but, you know, you still need the work.
You want the mentors. I benefited a lot from getting mentors.
Yes.
You know, it's definitely shot my skills up a lot more than what they were like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
But there are some people out there that don't need mentors. I mean, I've seen them. I'm friends with some of these people who, it's all great and well, but I think those people still would benefit because they don't then need to relearn what those guys have learned. Yeah, they might learn it faster than I would, but it would have gone even faster if they had the lecturer there by them. You know, if you're going to be a prodigy, why not use all the resources around you?
So moving on, question number 9, and we've pretty much brought this up again already. What are the reviews like? Don't just look for the good reviews.
Yeah.
I know you sometimes fall in love with the school because you saw the website, but do your best to try to find the most recent reviews. If the reviews are more than 5 years old, you might want to take them with a grain of salt, because I have seen other art schools that just coast on their reputation, and that's never good. So always try to find the most recent reviews from students if you can. Question number 10. This was also another thing that the animator I met in Comic-Con 2009, she told me to go to an art school that I wouldn't mind living in. And I thought originally she meant, like, you know, obviously I'm going to be living here because this is where the school is. But what I didn't count on was that, I might actually get a job here. So I want to go to a place where I want to live for a while. And
well, you can also double up that question by saying also make sure that you're okay with living in the studio or the school, because there's going to be a lot of late nights.
Oh heavens, yes. And at the same time, don't really fall in love with the place that you're at either, because unfortunately as commercial artists you have to go where the work is. So you might fall in love with one city, but then you get a job in the city across country, so just be open to your options. Have a
especially in the beginning of your career.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as a junior, media, or to mid-range animator, you are pretty much the dirt. You are the the dirt.
Dime
and then,
a dozen.
Yeah, it's a sad fact of now. It's just that there are millions of juniors, just a few less mid-level guys, and then there are so few senior animators, like good senior animators and then that they get up to leads. It's those guys are the ones that can pretty much demand where they want to work.
Yes. So just spend a couple of, pretty much once you get into the industry, just spend a couple of years being the yes man, yes sir, right away sir. And then, maybe when you get to mid-level, then you can start negotiating. But just try to establish yourself as a really good good to work with animator the first few years, and work will come your way. Number 11, do I have a good chance to get a job here? And I think this has been basically like, you don't want to go to an art school in the middle of nowhere, because that would be silly. Because, I mean, for us, for our school in particular, because Vancouver is such a huge, like, hub of just jobs in media in general, a lot of students got work in Vancouver. Not to say that there weren't a few students that didn't get jobs in Ottawa and Toronto, but for the most part, they stayed here. So you want to be in a place that's close to a lot of where a lot of good studios are, if you can. If you can't, well, just try to do your best to do the networking. Go to job fairs, go to conventions. Cartoon Expo in Burbank, CTNX, I think, is the abbreviation. Huge networking opportunity. So while you're in school, while you're still building up your portfolio, get as many professional opinions as you can.
Yeah.
If you don't go to one of those big expensive art schools, it does mean you might have to do a little bit more footwork. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So, so just some, want to wrap up with some, just some anecdotes and some other advice given by other art students. As I already mentioned, leave ego at the door, even if you hate your art professor.
Yeah, I've heard this from not just recently graduated people, but people who have been, and this doesn't even just apply to art fields. I've heard, I had like a lawyer friend who was the same thing. It's like, you don't know anything. You don't, and oh, this is also something I remember. You don't know anything when you go into the school. Don't go in there thinking you know more than anybody. Go in there thinking you know nothing. Even if you do know more, go in there thinking you know nothing, and then absorb everything that you can.
Yes.
Because if you have that attitude of, I don't know anything, you'll just learn so much. But if you go in there with the attitude of, oh, I know more than you, I don't need to listen to anybody, you're going to miss a piece of information, critical information that could benefit you.
Plus, as an artist, don't be afraid to relearn the basics. I thought I knew anatomy before I got into Van Arts, because I did take those life drawing classes. When I got into Clint's class, I was like, oh, I don't know anything. And and I learned so much. I learned so much anatomy from his classes, but it was probably because it just built up to the things that I already knew. And I would not be shy to go do it again, because
it's just, in that case, it's just a matter of learning a different way, and applying it to what you're just reinforcing those building blocks.
Yeah, which is another reason why tutorials are so great, because they're from other people. But if you don't really know your basics, the tutorials are going to be useless upon you. So don't just try to absorb as much information. And I also bolded another thing that someone said here. Also, for the love of God, learn as much about human/animal anatomy, still life, and perspective drawing as you can before you graduate.
Oh man, I'm so bad at perspective drawing. I need to do more of that.
Yeah, it's a big thing. You gotta, man.
It is so important. Even in animation, even if you're not doing the perspective of the background, your character still needs to walk in that perspective. So if you don't understand how to draw out the perspective, even if it's just the grid, you're going to have a hard time getting your character to walk down a particular line.
I'm a layout artist at my job, and a huge part of my job is perspective. I mean, like, I can't tell you how much about perspective I've learned since starting this job, and it's because I had to dig and find out, oh shoot, I gotta size these characters right, or else I'll get corrections. What was the other thing? Oh, also, the other thing that some advice was given was about just art programs and, again, tutorials. We were discussing about the Art Academy. There are a ton of cool little programs and YouTube tutorials and just websites you can look up. I actually have Flipnote Studio 3D on my 3DS. It's not for portfolio purposes, but it's just purely me animating for fun.
Oh yeah, find yourself sitting at a bus stop somewhere, and you're just creating a fun little animation. Record some sound to it, and I mean, all that. It's just practice, but it's practice that helps you.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe you do create something that looks amazing on it. Then you use it. You never know. It's a possibility. I wouldn't say use it as your go-to, but you never know. Yeah. And I mean, and you can easily send your flip notes to YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's easy to get it off there.
Yeah. I pretty much I pretty much just yank the what is it, the SD card out of my 3DS, and I just stick it in my laptop, and then it uploads as a video, and I'm like, sweet. And then lastly, if you didn't go to art school, I asked some people about what their regrets were for not going to art school, and some people also said some people get angry because they don't. I was incredibly angry for a long time because I didn't get to go to art school. And again, it's all about making connections. It's all about networking. And then more people just said, "Yeah, don't go. You don't need to go to the expensive art school." There was one girl who mentioned that she took classes. She wanted to go to Cal Arts, but ended up taking some classes elsewhere, and ended up being a heck of a lot cheaper. The reason she didn't go to Cal Arts, just way too expensive. It's basically an arm and a leg. Let's see. Yeah, again, don't need to go to expensive art school. And you had some more anecdotal evidence about professionalism? Just about...
Oh, well, okay, so we'll wrap up this adventure with this last little story, and then we'll give you some emails and everything to contact us. But basically, I've had two friends that I can remember off the top of my head who fight sort of the whole system of, like, this is my job, or this is how I need to present myself, and they'll fight it, and then it won't get them anywhere. It's I wish it was different. I do wish we lived in this beautiful Hollywood bubble where I'm going to be the underdog and I'm going to fight against the tyranny of the commercial artists, and that's such a great sentiment. It really is. It doesn't work. If you want to be the next director who brings out their animation and their characters and their new storyboards and everything, then you need to work up the ladders. Like, it is so impossible to be that guy in his room drawing up these character concepts and creating a pitch bible and then walking out to a Comic-Con and giving it to somebody and getting it picked up. It's hard for the people who are in the industry to do that, let alone somebody who is not even known, who's not even in the industry at all, or whatever. And it's all great and well that we want to be individuals. We want to be individual artists. I know as artists we want to do that. But again, looking at what these two friends of mine had done, and they did the same mistake. It was two different people on two different continents, and they did the same mistake. It was like they will do their own thing. They don't need to follow these rules set by the people who are in charge, and they will be the ones who change the face of this whole thing. And it's like, that's not how it works. Yeah. Because they themselves eventually, well, not the more recent person I've met, but the first guy, he eventually, while still trying to build his own thing, demanded that his rules be applied. So it's like,
We've even met people within the industry that's like, oh, you need to bend over backwards for me, and director's like, who are you?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Like, you have to, when you first get in, you need to, when you're at school, get the projects done, hand in the files, when you're at work, get the stuff done, get it done on time, get it done to a professional that they expect of you. It'll be hard. I'm not saying this is just something that you do over a weekend or a 5-minute. It's hard fucking work, but that's what you need to do so you can be the guy at the top. Yeah. Making the calls. You can be the creative director saying, I want the animation to go on this path. I want the characters to do this thing. I want the characters to look this way. But you can't do that at entry level. You can't do that at school. And to have that attitude at school and to be all uppity about it and say, oh, I am the kid who paid for this, so you should do what I want. No, that's not how it works. You're there to learn from those people. And if you don't learn from them, you're not going to get anywhere. Or at least it's going to take a really long time. Like the first person in this reference to, like, he eventually started like working a lot more hardcore on his portfolio, making a lot more graphically appealing designs, and he's gotten a lot more work now. And actually he's also changed his career. But towards the end of his graphic design career, he was amazing. He is amazing. He's an amazing artist. I mean, even without following this path, but he was so adamant on being his own artist, his own boss, his own controlling his own destiny in that regard, that he forgot that there is still a level of professionalism you need to follow, and it set him back, set him back so many years where he could have been maybe something else completely different. He could have been climbing up a ladder. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he would have just been stuck in the same dead end job. I don't know. It's anything is possible. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't hurt to learn, and it doesn't hurt to get the job done.
Right.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of hard work. But when you get it done, happy days. I have another friend who, I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, and if he's listening to this, he's going to know who I'm talking about. But he worked at me with one of my first animation productions, and he's very imaginative, but he does the job handed to him, but he tries to figure out a way to make it more interesting. So if he has a scene where a character is just standing there blinking, and we get scenes like that, and that's a great way to just sort of make a couple of bucks and just hand it in and happy days. But he would try and find a way, like maybe initially just get the character to shift his position, or the previous scene was him doing something this, so maybe I'd get him to wave his hand or whatever, to the point that what he would do is he would hand him the scene that was asked of him, and then on a weekend he would come in and then change that scene up.
Yes.
And the example that I like to use is the scene was of the character doing the Running Man dance on like something, and he didn't like it because they had used that scene a good couple times before. So it was relatively easy just to sort of bring it in from a previous animation and just reuse the loop footage. But he came in on that Saturday and changed the scene from him, because they were laughing at something that had happened, and these characters are all really goofy. So instead of the character like dancing the Running Man, he grabbed a nearby TV and smashed his head against the TV a couple times, and he's like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And when he handed that in on the Monday, like his lead was like, oh, this is hilarious, this is brilliant, this is amazing. That's the proper way of doing that. You don't, if he had done that first, if he had handed in the head smashing against the TV, and arguably the director or the lead, maybe the lead liked it, but then the director didn't like it. But he doesn't have the first scene handed in, he's going to get into trouble. It is worse to not hand in the scene and have an amazing scene, and that gets rejected, than it is that it is better. This is such a convoluted way of saying this. It is worse, the cost and benefit. It is worse to do it that way and not have something to hand in on time than it is to do something additionally. Because if you do something additionally and you have the backup, great. And you've just maybe worked over a Saturday, but it's only benefited you. Whereas if you don't hand in the original file, your boss will not be happy.
Right.
Your lead will be like, no, get this done. You got to get this done now. And then if you start putting pressure on yourself like on short notice like that, you're not going to get it done as beautifully. So what I'm saying is, if you are that type of person who wants to, if your project is take a circle and make it bounce, and you want to make a circle, do a dive into a scene and then a backflip and then a splash, and then he breaks into a million other little bouncy circles and then bounce around, that's fine. But do the bounce animation first.
Yeah.
Do what is requested of you first. Hand that in, then do the amazing thing. And if it comes out well, if it looks good, your lecturer or your boss will take that other one, and you will get your name added to it. But if they don't like that thing, and then you haven't done the other one, school-wise, you'll get a bad mark. Work-wise, you won't get your money, you won't get paid for that job. And your boss will be like, this guy's not doing what I'm asking him.
Right.
I don't want to hire him anymore. And that's just sort of a little bit of advice from somebody who's seen it happen to friends. It just comes down to whether or not you want to listen to me.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, that guy has more experience within the industry than the rest of us.
Yeah.
So.
No, fine. And he does have, but he's got a very good imagination, a very good storytelling mind. And so that's benefited him. But he does at least the job asked of him first.
Yeah.
It's this guy who is good at doing this thing. But, I mean, I remember he had done another scene like that before, where he did the job and then he handed in another version of it. And the lead liked it, but the director didn't like it. And so they had to go back to the original one. But they were all laughing at the new version. It was like nowhere near the storyboards. As so was the TV smashing thing. It was just they were like, oh, well, we have it, let's make it funny. Because obviously the Running Man loop thing that, like, it was just the storyboard is like, oh, okay, well, let's not make it too hard for the animators.
Right.
Which storyboarders love making life difficult. I'm watching you guys. There's going to be another Jets versus Sharks. It's going to be animators versus storyboarders one of these days.
No.
Just down the passageways. I'm telling you, sometimes the storyboarders make my life so hard. And I know they don't mean to, but it's like, I'm so sad sometimes. Anyway, I don't hate storyboarders, I love them. I want to be one.
I do too, actually.
But, yeah.
Did I ever tell you that our previous comic production teacher actually works on storyboards for my production?
Yeah, when I was working in my first production, I saw him there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's going to be that. We're going to wrap this up. It's been well over an hour. If you want to email us on other topics you want us to discuss, I mean, we do have something under our belts. We want to talk about how to make money online, I guess, how to be a freelance designer, animator type of thing, how to set standards and everything, the etiquette behind that. We've also got a discussion with a guest that we want to get in, talking about female representation in media, particularly cartoons. So watch out, you meninists out there. It's some serious discussion. And and if there's anything you want to hear us talk about, or we'll do the research, and Emily's done a very good job with this episode.
Oh, thank you.
So if you want to, if there's anything you want to hear about us, email us at theanonymousanimators@gmail.com. And we have a Tumblr, the Anonymators.
It's just anonymators.tumblr.com.
And there's a YouTube channel, which you're probably listening to. And if not, there's a iTunes channel. Just look for Anonymous Animators when you search for it. It's pretty easy. And any comments would be great. Mm-hmm. You can write it in the comments, like what you want us to do the research on, or whatever.
If you have any questions about any part of the animation industry.
And we'll happily, if you have questions about what we've just discussed now, ask us, email us, or send us the question on the comments sections, and we'll bring it up on the next show, if there is anything. Yeah.
Please email us. We're very lonely.
All right. So, is there anything else you want to plug?
Just my usual, neuroticartist@tumblr.com, nerostreet.deviantart.com. I'm trying to do more animations, but dagnabbit, I just get so sleepy when I get home.
Yeah. Look, animation's a tough job, so.
And it's summer, and I get so sleepy during the summer.
No doubt. Sleepy and sweaty.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody, and hopefully we'll hear from us later. That's the weird way to sign off. Bye.
Later.